I'm the only candidate that wants to get out of Afghanistan tomorrow.
In guarding the civil liberties and civil rights lies the essence of liberty.
We must not accept these reasons to destroy each other.
The real question is, how do you prevent a terrorist attack?
The hatred continues and the violence continues against the Sikhs.
Here is a nation of laws, and these laws are here to protect everybody. Equal justice.
No detention without a trial.
So you have the question of morality and legality.
And the efforts that you have here now are a tremendous asset.
The more we educate our fellow Americans, the better our society will be.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming. I apologize for the delay. And so today will be, the American Muslim Alliance Foundation is hosting a series of a hospitality suite and a series of panels. Today we'll be discussing the mistreatment of religious minorities in the United States. And I'll start by just talking a little bit about the mission of the American Muslim Alliance Foundation. So the AMA, their main goal is to organize the American Muslim community in the mainstream public affairs, civic discourse, and party politics all across the United States. So we're very honored to be here at the Democratic National Convention and to be here with all of you for sure. So I will be moderating, and this is our panel. I believe I'll introduce all of them, and I believe that Congressman André Carson, he is the second Muslim elected to Congress in the U.S. history. He will probably be joining us in maybe a few minutes, but I'll introduce the panel and we'll start our discussion as is. So first, I'd love to introduce Mr. Harpreet Sandhu. He is the former council member in the city of Richmond, California. He's currently serving on the executive committee of the Democratic Party in California, and he's the former president of a Sikh temple in El Sobrante, California. And sitting next to him is Ms. Sarah Flounders. She is the co-director of International Action Center that was founded in 1992 by former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark as an activist organization opposing U.S. imperialism. The International Action Center is committed to the building of broad-based grassroots coalitions to oppose U.S. wars abroad, while at the same time fighting against racism and economic exploitation here in the USA. Ms. Flounders has served as a UN representative of Nord-Sud and on the Secretariat of IAPSCC. She has twice been elected member of the board of WBAI Public Radio and is a co-author and an editor of 10 books, in addition to working with many team of activists in producing videos and various websites. She was the national organizer in 2002 and 2003 of the huge Washington demonstrations opposing the invasion of Iraq. And in 2010, she coordinated the emergency mobilization against racism and anti-Muslim bigotry, which resulted in a major outpouring of thousands of people determined to stand for unity and solidarity. Also, copies of her new book is available in the back for purchase. Next, sitting next to Ms. Flounders is Mr. Khalil Meek. And he's the co-founder of the Muslim Legal Fund of America and its current executive director. The Muslim Legal Fund of America is a 501c3 charity that supports legal cases impacting civil rights and liberties in America. MLFA is comprised of staff, volunteers, and supporters from all walks of life who have one thing in common: the belief that treating people unfairly because of their religious beliefs undermines the core values that makes America great. Mr. Meek also served as the president of the Islamic Association of Louisville Flower Mount from 2001 to 2007, which he co-founded, and the president of the Council of American Islamic Relations, DFW chapter 2004 to 2007. Sitting next to him is Mr. Stephen Downs. Mr. Stephen Downs, Esquire, is the executive director of the National Coalition to Protect Civil Freedoms. This organization is a coalition of national and local organizations, as well as prominent individuals whose mission is to educate the public about the erosion of civil and political freedoms in the society. Mr. Downs graduated from Cornell Law School in 1969 and spent most of his professional career as chief attorney with the New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct. So again, thank you to all of our panelists for coming along today and to speak about this very important issue. So before we start, I'll just say a little bit about the panel, about the subject at hand, the mistreatment of religious minorities in the United States. Now, I think a key word here is religious minorities. We didn't just say Muslim, we didn't just say one religion, because I think in light of recent news that it's been everywhere about the Sikh shooting in Wisconsin, as well as just it's an influx of anti-Muslim attacks on mosques throughout the country. And these are not just new attacks, this has been happening very prolifically since September 11th. It's 12 years later, and this is still happening. And so the question needs to be asked, why is this happening? And what is being done? What is being done to our community? What are we doing? And also, now that we're here at the DNC, we're here at a platform, many of us here are delegates, what do we have to do to make sure that our elected officials and our government is accountable? So I'd love to I'd love to open up the discussion now for our panelists to talk about the mistreatment, talk about maybe some background, positive, negatives, barriers, and whatever else they would love to share. So I would start with Mr. Harpreet Sandhu.
Again, thank you for giving the opportunity to speak. Unfortunately, I have to leave afterwards, so I may not be able to participate in the question and answer because we all have another engagement. Coming back to the subject itself, mistreatment of minorities, the Sikh community came to this country over 100 years plus, and matter of fact, we're celebrating the foundation of our temple in Stockton. Our secretary is here for that Gurdwara, as we call the temple. So over those 100 years, just like any immigrants, we came and it was economic reasons, and they discovered this country because prior to that, England just held this jubilee, and some of the people who served in the armed forces came to Canada under the empire and discovered this place, and slowly migration came to this country in the 20s and 30s. A lot of people came for education, and many of them came to become doctors and what have you in the Midwest and stayed on. But the larger migration came in after the opening of the Exclusionary Act was taken away in 65 or thereafter, in 68 on. A larger migration came for the Sikh community. The community itself was, I guess, in the shadows, just like any other minority communities, working in the background in anywhere from the railroads and on, working in entrepreneurship of jobs or opening their own jobs and employment. The political aspect came kind of out of just the same reasons. A gentleman, Mr. San, came to this country, got his degree in UC Berkeley in 1928, and wasn't able to practice. And then, for that reason, he became a farmer in way down in El Centro, married a Hispanic young woman, and raised a family and became the first congressman in this country. And unbeknown to many people, that's the first Asian congressman. And thereafter, nothing has happened in the last 50 years, politically to that extent. The community grew larger and larger. I came to this country in 1970, and as a young kid with our family, as did most of the people back in the 70s. Many of the Sikhs at that time came from Uganda, Africa, because of Idi Amin. So there was an exodus of many Sikhs who came from there as well. The community grew mostly in California and on the other side of the East Coast, and sporadic places throughout the country. The Bay Area, as is known in California, since most of it might be from California, it became the hub for the Sikh community and also the farming community. So in terms of treatment of minorities, as they became larger and more visible, and as you can see, Sikhs are very visible in the sense that men and women wear turbans as for our religion. I was privy to the Iran crisis, and we were very few, and it was mostly name-calling and perhaps not so much physical at that time. Sadly, if I may rush towards 9/11, things really changed for the Sikh community. Since 9/11, there have been over 700 cases that have been documented of abuse, and of course, September 11 and September 14th, Balbir Singh Sodhi was killed in Arizona 3 days thereafter. And then not only that, and there was a hysteria of the anti-immigrant and Muslim. Sikhs were pulled off trains and shown on TV, CNN, numerous times as to look at these people who have been caught on trains, people turning people in because they felt they were dangerous, regardless of what you looked at. It wasn't because they were Muslim. Hispanics who were also beaten in LA area just because people perceived them as something different or in that nature. So people throughout the country were beaten. Women, a young woman in LA was pulled out of a car and they slashed her with a knife many times. So all these things happened. What I heard, and I shouldn't say, Sikhs were obviously outraged and they wanted the president to say something. Put to the country here, look, stop this nonsense, stop what's going on in this country. Not just because against the Sikhs, but people in general who were perceived and recipient of such hatred. And supposedly, it cost them a pretty penny to get that appointment, just to see the president to address the issue, because for whatever reasons. And so, even to the level, it was addressed somewhat, but the hatred continues and the violence continued against the Sikhs. If I may again move forward, and obviously because of that, many Sikh civil rights organizations were created. Saldaf, which was an earlier Sikh, it was called SMART at the time, was already addressing some of the issues in the Sikh community. Then after 9/11, two other organizations were created, United Sikhs and Sikh Coalition, to address the civil rights, civil violations that were going on throughout the country. But the violence still continued, regardless of that. Now, if I may move, because of my restricted time, move forward to what happened in Oak Creek. That was an extension that was unheard of since back from the 60s, when churches were bombed with the African American community, and people were same thing. And most of our community never went through what we had gone through this country from the 60s and prior to that. So this violence was unseen for this country for perhaps 30, 40 years. And here we were reliving the same tragedy in a place of faith, somebody coming in, killing in violent fashion. And if I may talk, I happened to go to Wisconsin. It happened on Sunday. I was there Wednesday night, Thursday morning, and the fabric of the community was just actually torn apart for the 6 individual families that were, of the 3 people who were killed that day, 3 were priests. 2 had just were married to 2 other sisters, and with young kids. They had just come into this country, and they were young kids, families who haven't seen their father for many years and only coming to the funeral. Other families, a mother, age of 42, killed, and that was tragic in her family. And every family is a tragic incident. But what was really alarming to me was we had the opportunity to go see Lieutenant Murphy, who was the individual, who was the officer that was shot 8 times during this episode. We went to the hospital just to thank the family for what he had done and saved the lives of many. And at that time, his wife, Mr. Murphy's brother, and his brother-in-law met with us, but they were very hesitant and they did not take any photograph with us. The reason being they were afraid. These were people who were whites, who were afraid to be seen and seen by the white supremacists, that they will then also become targets. I've lived all my life in the Bay Area, and I had never experienced such hatred and some fear of individuals, especially the white supremacists. And that was really alarming to see that people like me, I never think of being afraid, but here they are, these guys would blend into the community, and they're afraid of these white supremacists and the action that there might be retributed against. And that threw me for a loop. And even to this point, that you never see the family's picture. We talked to the FBI, and some pictures were being taken of the incidents, and they said, please do not put that in the public view, because even they said the FBI, if you go to these people's homes, they orchestrate or create the same scene in their homes as a shrine to their hatred. So they feel that what they've achieved is something right, and they wish to glorify it. So the hate is unseen, and for me at least, never having experienced the Midwest in that sense. What can we do? The old saying goes, if you're not if you're at the table, either you're the menu or you're sitting at the table. We do not have enough elected officials who can really address our needs. Many of our people, as I said, for the Sikh community, it's been 50 years since we have an elected official who can address these issues. Yes, you go, you talk to them, you talk to the Justice Department, you talk to many other organizations, as we have, as other communities of the Muslim faith have. Things aren't still working as they should, I believe. Much has been talked about and addressed. If you take the airports, Sikhs our religion was born in Pakistan, which is now Pakistan. Prior to that was just one nation, and majority of our faith positions in Pakistan. If I were to fly into Pakistan today and fly back straight from Pakistan, at the airport they will take away my phone, they will download everything I have, they will take every credit card that I have, they will investigate, they will ask me for hours, who did you see, who did you meet? And I'm not even a person of the Muslim faith. I'm just a Sikh who went to somebody. So if this is happening to me, I just can't imagine what they do with other people. Your names are on the list, they pull people off time and time again. That happens continuously with Sikhs and other people as well. A good friend of mine where I work, his name is, he tells me that if you have your boarding pass, if you have 3 or 4 S's behind it, even before you leave the country, you're interrogated, why are you going, where are you going out there? He has gone and put his name for readdress, they've given his name and number, but again, it comes out for a short while and it goes back on. So even when you're traveling, you're a suspect of every nature. For the Sikhs, it's quite simple. When I get on the airport, I go through either 3 or 4 screenings. I go to the metal detector, then I go through the electric wand, then I go to the hand swab, or the ATD machine with the magnetic one. And after that, I go through and it's fine every time. But when I get on the plane, the only safest passenger on that plane is me. The reason being, I've gone through 3 to 4 securities. I'm worried about everybody else on that plane. You know, and I kid with it. Well, why do you do that? Well, that's a turban is an anomaly. As are for women, if you had a bun in the hair, that's an anomaly. Any covered thing is an anomaly. And so we tell them, yes, we're for safety, no doubt about it. I don't want to be the victim of any, but by either names or other ways of doing this is not fair to our community, to other communities. So I urge you to please be active politically. In your community, it's always a coalition building. Please address your issues to others who are elected. If not being able to be in a position to be elected, if you go to the Hill, you see tons of people going and meeting their congressmen and talking to their needs and requirements. And that must be continued. Be positive in the field. Yes, this is a nation, it's a wonderful nation. We all want to be here and we are here. We're not going away. So we are the fiber, what makes this beautiful country. It is no longer a salad bowl, the soup they want, but it's just a beautiful country that we all should thrive, participate, and educate your neighbors. There's nobody, if somebody hates me that much, I don't think it could be a neighbor that would hate me if he got a chance to know me. So I thank you for the work you're doing. It's an ongoing battle, and I think we need to be vigilant ourselves as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sandhu, for sharing your very first-hand accounts of what has occurred in your community and in your own life. I'd actually like to give a special introduction to Congressman André Carson. He's joined us today. Congressman André Carson has represented Indiana's 7th District in the U.S. House of Representatives since 2008. Since that time, Congressman Carson has been recognized for his commitment and has taken on leadership roles, serving as a regional whip for the Democratic Caucus and the whip for the Congressional Black Caucus. So thank you, Congressman, for coming today, and I'll open the floor for you to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nadia. Let me apologize for jumping in line if I've done so. I greatly apologize. I have a few commitments, and I have a panel that I committed to at 2 at the Convention Center. But I really appreciated Harp Harpreet's comments because it's so critically important. I've been in office for 4.5 years, and I'm often asked, what does it mean to be a Muslim member of Congress? And I tell people very clearly, I say it means on one end, myself and Keith Ellison, it means to represent all that is great about American possibility. It means to be able to represent all that is promising about our country and how an African American, who's also Muslim, can represent a diverse constituency where Muslims have very small numbers in my district. But it also means to be confronted with deep levels of suspicion, with deep levels of animosity, and with deep levels of mistrust. Now, I kind of get a double dosage because I'm Muslim and I'm a big black guy. So you have double the suspicion, double the assumption, and double the mythology busting that it may take to realign the thoughts, hearts, and minds of those who perpetrate these acts. I was deeply troubled a few weeks ago when I read about the shooting at the Sikh temple. Before I came to Congress, I was a city councilor, but I also worked at the Department of Homeland Security in counterterrorism and counterintelligence. And it was a life-changing moment because we would get calls all the time and people would say, well, there are these folks, rural part of the state, there are these folks who around 5 a.m. every morning they start chanting, I want you guys to do something about it. Well, they were praying, they were making early morning prayers as Muslims. Or we would get calls, well, there's a guy here, he just walked into the store with a turban on it, and he's a Muslim, and I think he wants to do something. Sikh brother. And so it opened up an opportunity for me as a Muslim to educate fellow law enforcement officers about the different religious diversity that is represented in our society. Law enforcement agencies do not do a good enough job at educating the population, and particularly the police forces. Oftentimes, the folks who are doing the education are from rural parts of their respective states, and they've gone through a 2 or 3 day course and they become certified. And that tells me that there is a gap in the way in which Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Jews, and others have as it relates to educating law enforcement officers. Now, that bond has been broken recently given the news of the secret relationship between the CIA and the New York Police Department with their unwarranted spying on Muslims. Now, I'll let the attorneys figure this out, but I don't even think, even in places like California where Muslims have been monitored, that they haven't even met the reasonable suspicion of probable cause test, let alone to just have agents there monitoring Muslims. But I always encourage minority groups, Sikhs, Muslims, Hindus, whoever, to become a part of the political process. We have to refuse the inclination and push back on the inclination to constantly demonize the political process. Because as Muslims, we found out very quickly. I remember before 9/11, I would try to get folks registered to vote, and they would say, well, that's against the religion, that's haram, that's forbidden, you shouldn't do that. And then 9/11 hit, and it became very difficult to operate in the workplace. It became very difficult to do your job as an employee without feeling the levels of animosity and hatred. Very difficult. And I know Sikh brothers and sisters have been met with the same kind of discrimination. It's good to see you, Hassan Aloush. We were out in California last week. We missed you. We'll see you again. Yasmin, talk to Brother Hassan. He represents CARE very well. But for me, I encourage you to make an investment in this country Many of you have made great contributions. Many of us are making great contributions in science, mathematics, fields of law, medicine, business. Go to any major hospital and you'll find a minority physician in this country. But there's a gap because Muslims and Sikhs aren't represented very well, and Hindus aren't represented very well in the political spectrum. And I think post 9/11 will create a space for that. Now, I come out of the black church tradition, civil rights tradition. And because of that, I think that the African American community, somebody asked me, they said, I'm surprised that the first two Muslims in Congress are black and Muslim. One would expect for the first two Muslims to be maybe Arab American, South Asian descent, to be from the East Coast, maybe the West Coast. But I make a different kind of argument. I say, no. Look at the history of civil rights in this country. Look at the inroads that African Americans have made in this country. Look at the inroads that African American Muslims have made in this country. And then we can see that because there was a government apparatus through Jim Crow, through slavery, and etc., that kind of pressure created a space for resistance. It created a space for us to work together cooperatively and come together to push back and critique a system that purports to represent justice for all. And unfortunately, it's going to take that kind of pressure for us to not become well-adjusted, to be afraid of who we are, to be comfortable with having an invisible existence. It's going to take pressure for us to force ourselves into the political space. And so I just want to say that I'm happy to be able to speak here. I hate that I'm going to miss the distinguished panelists and hear what they have to say and to draw from their wisdom and insight. But I just want to say, whoever you are, whatever you claim to profess, be proud of who you are. Don't take off your hijab. Don't take off your headscarf. Don't take off your turban. Be proud of who you are. Embrace who you are. And that kind of pride will open the door for true dialogue about what it means to be a Muslim, what it means to be a Sikh, what it means to be an African American, what it means to be a Caucasian American, of Irish descent, Italian descent, whatever. What it means to be who you are. And what does your religion mean? Yes, I may be a Muslim. Yes, I may be a Christian. Yes, I may be Jewish. But what does it mean to be what you are? And that can open the dialogue. Not to proselytize, not to condemn, not to convert, but to educate. And the more we educate our fellow Americans, the better our society will be, because then we will open a space throughout decades to value others' opinions and others' beliefs. And that's what America was founded on, and that's what America is all about. Oftentimes, elected officials come before Muslims, they come before Sikhs, Hindus, to raise money. African Americans, we know this deeply. We know this deeply. And they want to raise money or get their support. When the poll numbers are close, you start seeing politicians show up to different ethnic events, different religious minority events, and those kind of things. But after they get the support that they're looking for, they leave without a demand from the group. The group is just impressed, just satisfied with having an elected official visit a dinner, visit a Ramadan iftar, visit some kind of religious celebration. We had Counselor so-and-so there, we had Governor so-and-so there, we had Congressperson so-and-so there, and they're happy. We raised $50,000 for Congressman so-and-so, yay! But when there was a shooting at the Sikh temple, where was that same Congressperson? Issuing a press release, standing in solidarity with different religious groups, speaking out against religious bigotry. all of a sudden they want to create a distance. They don't want to be seen because it may be used against them in the next campaign. That's unacceptable. Power concedes nothing without a demand. We have to demand more from our elected officials. Much as I disagree with the Tea Party on a plethora of issues, when they talk about increasing levels of transparency in government, I stand in solidarity with them. When they talk about holding elected officials accountable, I stand in solidarity with them. When they talk about taking our country back to the good old days, peace out. Right? But even within our own communities, we have to be more responsible about how we court and deal with politicians. Now, you know, we all know traditional courtship. When you like someone, when you like a nice young lady, you want to take her out, take her to dinner, sit down with her, get to know her. You don't just don't hit third base. I know this is a religious meeting, I gotta be careful. I used to be a cop, forgive me. You just don't try to get to second base without getting to know her first, and if she has any self-worth and self-respect, she won't let you. We can't just be happy at the first person who shows us attention. You need to make this a political American Idol. You have to audition to get our support. You need to audition to get our contributions. Publicly. Don't have a private meeting and can I get some money from me? I don't want the media to know, but no, you want our support? There are 20,000 Sikhs or Muslims in this city. We can make or break an election, financially and vote-wise. By the next 5 years, we plan to have at least 50 ward captains on the rolls. We can make or break an election. That's the kind of sentiment you should have. That's why the black community has been so successful and becoming more successful in the political sphere, because of that kind of planning. Though there was a political structure against the community, it was that kind of planning that helped lead the way. I think too, and I'll let these scholars speak, I think oftentimes our communities tend to be too reactionary. Too reactionary. I can tell you an example. In 2009, there was a resolution that came before Congress, as these resolutions do, reaffirming the U.S.'s relationship with the State of Israel. There were, Congressman Ellison and I, he voted president, I voted yes. There were Muslims who were upset with me about this resolution. Because they said, how could you do this kind of thing? The reason why I supported the resolution was because it had 3 provisions. And I told my Jewish friends this and I told the Muslims this. It called for a 2-state solution. It called for an apology to the Palestinian people. And it called for an investment of millions of dollars into Palestine. Now, Muslims didn't even read the damn resolution. They don't read most things. They're so reactionary, about, they want to create these mythologies around everything. They didn't even read the damn resolution. And they were so upset because they thought that they had been betrayed. Now, this is the kind of stuff I had to go through with Muslims who aren't even my constituents. I could have said, go to hell. But no, I didn't, because it was a teachable, my wife's a principal, it was a teachable moment. It was a teachable moment. And I encourage other communities to do the same. Before you become reactionary, before you become upset, before you start to protest, understand what is before you legislatively and be proactive. Look at the legislation, understand it, go to the Hill and lobby, talk to your member of Congress. I'm still on a warpath with Muslims about that. I'm still on a warpath, and I won't stop because I want to hold them accountable too. Because my constituents are like, okay, you're a Muslim, Carson. All right, you're from the Midwest, you're not from the Middle East. What are you going to do about my job? Assalamu alaikum, all right, that's nice. I need a job. Our roads need to be paved. What are you sending back into the district? And so I think that these communities are going to have to figure out how can you reaffirm your cultural and religious pride, but at the same time provide services to your constituents. They elected you. When I came to office, I took my oath. It's not an actual oath, it's a photo op on the Constitution, because I wanted to be very clear that I'm here to uphold the Constitution of the United States. I don't want to get into a religious debate about this surah in the Quran or this verse in the Bible or what it means in the Apocrypha. I'm here to do a duty and serve my constituents. To that point, and I close, until we hold our officials accountable, until we hold the parties accountable, RNC and DNC, we won't get anything out of it. Thank you. This handsome guy stepping down. I've spoken too long. I'm out.
Mr. Stephen Downs, Esquire, and if you could come up here and please speak. Thank you.
I just happen to have come from Washington, D.C., where I attended the ISNA conference and spoke on a panel involving Islamophobia. And I was very struck in that we had several very good scholars, Muslim scholars, talking about a litany of problems involving the Muslim community and other religious minorities. And in the middle of these, they would periodically put in something to the effect of how much they loved America and how appreciative they were of the opportunities that had been given to them, and how they really appreciated the values that America had always held out. And then also a sense of, we don't understand how America became so unhinged. If principles are principles, they should be upheld. What happened to this country? And how can we get back this country that we love, we want to build, and so on? And I think particularly because the Muslim community is a highly moral, a very energetic, a very productive community. And they're doing a tremendous amount to build America. And I remember one gentleman coming up to me and asking me a very pointed question. And he said, why? Can you please tell me why? Why are they doing this to a community that is so productive and so generous and so adds so much to the United States? And who cares about the United States so much? Why are you doing this? And I have to, the answer I gave him was a simple thing. It was fear. There is fear out there, and fear warps people's minds and twists the way we think about things. But it was not entirely inaccurate, because that fear, I think, has part of America. It is as American as apple pie. We have always held people of different races, of different nationalities, of different ethnicities, who we think of as strange or different. We've always held them off and been afraid with them up until the point we're in a foxhole with them and we suddenly have to get along, and then they become Americans, they become accepted in. And I think certainly there's a long history of ethnic and religious communities being profiled. There's the American Indians, starting with the American Indians, the Latinos, African Americans, Chinese, Italians, and so on. I mean, there's just a long list of them. But I'm also thinking that there is at least several periods in which this kind of profiling based on fear of strangers or people we don't know can become intellectualized and becomes part of an intellectual battle that goes on in America. And one of the first ones I encountered as a child was the fear of communism. And this, as you recall, was a long battle that went through McCarthyism, in which people were being thrown out of their jobs and persecuted and so on. But it was an intellectual battle in a way that was fought. And that sort of morphed later on into COINTELPRO. And if you're African American, you will probably remember that period with particular disgust, when when the US government intellectually sort of decided that in order to preserve itself, it was necessary to take a group of people, particularly the Black Panthers, and I'm going to focus particularly on the Black Panthers, although it was a very broad range of people, and went after them. And in a completely illegal way, there was a targeted assassination of Fred Hampton. They Geronimo Pratt, they pinned false murder charges on him. They did things that were just completely unacceptable. And Frank Church in his committee later on in the mid-70s that reviewed this said these are things that are completely unacceptable for a government to do. to make war on its own people. You cannot do that and have a democracy at the same time. What happened in COINTELPRO should never happen again. And it was held in check to some extent until 9/11, and unfortunately 9/11 reopened, I think, the whole COINTELPRO period. And I describe this period now as being COINTELPRO on steroids. It is all of the things that we hated most about COINTELPRO have come back. And I just wanted, as I was preparing for today, I was kind of writing down a list of some of the things that I disliked the most, some of the things that really trouble me. And I wanted to start with the biased training that we're giving to our intelligence officers, our police officers, our armed forces, and so on. It is as though we have gone out and taken the most extreme possible views and have incorporated them into our trainers, who will then tell the rest of the government and the rest of the people how to respond to things. And then we are surprised at the result and why people respond in a hateful way. I think particularly of somebody like Wally Shubat, who was a trainer for years with the FBI, was paid huge sums of money to propagate the most extreme theory that we are essentially at war with Islam. Now even George Bush, dumb as he was, could get the concept that we are not going to win a war if we're taking on all of Islam. This simply is not going to happen. So anyway, that is certainly a major problem. I could just quickly run down some of the other ones. Was preemptive prosecutions, Sharia law. They're building CMUs out in the Midwest. They have closed the torture investigation without any finding anyone. And of course, all of these things tend to stigmatize the Muslim community. I just wanted to really end there are the Peter King hearings, there was the Ground Zero mosque incident, there was this whole series of involved discrimination in employment. There was one thing that I just wanted to mention, which I think is really key to how we get out of this problem. A few months ago, Michelle Bachmann, if you'll remember, stands up in front of a microphone and has a list in her hands of Muslim Brotherhood related people that are present in the State Department. And if you'd flash back 40 years or so, I mean, this was right out of the McCarthy, Senator McCarthy standing up in Wheeling, West Virginia. I have in my hand a list of 250 communists in the State Department. Same department, oddly enough, and actually named a few. And boy, it looked like it was headed off in the same direction. Same kind of intellectualization of hate. And Senator John McCain stood up in the Senate along with a bunch of other very courageous leaders and said, no, I know her. She's no threat. She's a very loyal American. And what you are saying is completely irresponsible and you have to stop it. And she stopped it. She didn't stop it, but the media stopped covering it. The whole thing kind of collapsed in a big fuzz out. And that's what we need. We need courageous, responsible leaders who are willing to step up and stop it. And I just wanted to close with one little thing. Before I got to talk, I was, Farrell Masri down here just came up to me and was just chatting with me and told me her story. And her story is one of the most wonderful stories I've heard in a long time about running for office. And has not yet won, came very close on a number of occasions. But as she says, every time she ran for office, she won. Even though she lost the vote, she was able to educate people and tell people about what the Muslim community is about, and made lots of friends, and actually made Republican friends, and made them see what a reasonable person she was and the reasonable community that the Muslims are. And I think people like Masri are just the hope for the future. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Downs. Next, I'd like to invite Ms. Sarah Founders to the floor. Thank you.
Well, it's very much an honor to be here among friends, and I want to begin by thanking the American Muslim Alliance Foundation for organizing these panels. I want to start actually by saying, being totally transparent, I'm not here as part of, or not here for the convention. I'm in Charlotte participating in the March Against Wall Street South, focusing on the role of the banks and the military corporations, which really determines a policy of endless war and the attacks here at home. And that focus on the role of the banks and the major military oil corporations who profit from war and who must find targets and victims and focus here at home, we need to see. And also, I'm here in that sense because I think we best set the national agenda so often in the streets. If you saw yesterday's news with a picture of the thousands who came out in Charlotte from around the country against Wall Street South. This is the financial center of the country, second to Wall Street. And that's why the Democratic Convention is here. So that target, and I want to pick up from what the Congressman reminded us of the words of Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, never will. So making the demands and in the streets, also part here as part of the Occupy movement, who set up an encampment right across the street, out there in quite a number of tents. They're right now having a demonstration right across the street and confronting the police in defense of Private Bradley Manning, a very courageous individual who's done more to expose U.S. secrets and crimes, war crimes on a huge scale, the release of the videos that we know now through WikiLeaks, and what, rather than becoming and being lauded as a hero he faces life in prison. He's faced years now, 2 years in solitary confinement. So this rally going on right now is really a message that I think we need to listen to, and the big demonstration that happened on Sunday and the Occupy movement coming here. This is what's news around the world. The conventions can be huge, orchestrated, multi-million dollar extravaganzas where every word, every minute of TV time is choreographed in advance. And sometimes the way to have the impact is in the streets. So I just raised that for thought here. At least thought from a current of the political movement in the US today that is very much aligned with the struggles for justice and for human rights all over the world. I want to pay a little attention also, if we're going to talk about the NDAA. Now, what is the NDAA? It is really the National Defense Authorization Act. It's a military budget. And if anything shows so clearly the links between the attacks on our rights and the ever-growing, expanding militarism, it's where they put the clauses that really attack all of our rights, right in the military bill. So the wholesale attacks, and I very much want to thank Steve Downs, who every time he comes and speaks anywhere brings that wall back there of the victims of secret detention and preemptive prosecution, attacks. I think almost everyone on that wall back there is facing decades in prison, gruesome prisons. People held in sensory deprivation conditions, torturous conditions. And the list, the targets right there on the wall, it's saying we won't forget. And we're going to keep demanding justice for those who've been targeted, to create a climate of fear. Every one of those cases was a big organized extravaganza by some prosecutor who was making their career on targeting someone absolutely defenseless and overwhelmingly, again and again, innocent of any crime, except to be inexperienced in the judicial system in the US. Maybe not having a lawyer at the right time. So I just want to make a few comments on this, and also I want to very much agree with Dr. Aga Said in organizing these events and the material that he put out before, that the public unawareness of the draconian clauses of the NDAA, it's really an effort to write off our rights, rights that have been won in 200 years of struggle. And it's always important to see, I think, this contradiction, to remember US history. Yes, there are always certain principles put forward: democracy, equality, human rights. But this is also a country built on slavery, on racism, on genocide of the indigenous people. So it's that endless, continuing contradiction between saying one thing and doing another, between the myth and the reality. And this, it goes all the way back in history. It's good to remember COINTELPRO and the Red Scare and the 1919 raids and the Chinese Exclusion Act, because that's part of the history too, and an important part. How did the Bill of Rights even come into existence? There was a constitution written by the rich white bankers and merchants and slave owners to protect property, and they couldn't get it passed. They faced open rebellions without a Bill of Rights that at least guaranteed some basic rights to free white men and property. And since then, it's been the struggle to expand those rights given to a limited few. And now there's an effort to push all of that back. So due process and equal justice, it's been a struggle for inclusion for all the people. I wanted to make a comment also on Islam and the attacks on Muslims in the US. Islam has been part of the fabric of the culture here 400 years, from the days of slavery. But the targeting of Muslims really is so attached to US wars in the Muslim world and how this is justified. The attacks on immigrants today, these new rulings which say that the basis of religion or race or nationality, national origin, it's okay to target people and to indefinitely hold and to deport based on what's really racial profiling. It's very dangerous for everyone in this country. Now, there's almost nowhere I speak that I don't want to ever forget, because some are targeted more than others, and the cry for justice for them. 1 minute, okay. I want to raise the case of Dr. Afia Siddiqui, Pakistani woman here in the US, and now sentenced to decades and decades, and the continuing campaign for her repatriation and return to Pakistan. Here's a woman who has been tortured in the most horrendous ways and held in complete isolation, and linking her case to every other case, whether it's Mumia Abu Jamal or Lynn Stewart or Leonard Peltier. That's important. It's important to defend and raise again and again the political prisoners who fought for our rights right here. Now, in closing, I'll say we face grave new dangers, regardless of who's elected. There's a war in Syria, totally US guns and equipment and trainers and mercenaries. There's a very real threat of war on Iran. There's the drone wars, just the asserting the right to attack any country, anywhere, anytime, in secret or in public, announced afterwards or not. Every single day, a drone attack in Pakistan, every day. This is an empire in decline and decay that is lurching from one crisis to another. And our standing up for rights, challenging this system and this empire, and linking to past struggles which have won every right in US history and set examples. The civil rights movement, it woke the whole world. It reflected the struggle against colonialism in Africa and in Asia to the struggle right here. These struggles are linked, they go back and forth. We saw it in a small way this past year with the Occupy movement, immediately rebounding, exciting people around the world. So the struggles for basic rights and the linking of these struggles, more possible today with the internet, with streaming, with videos, more important than ever. I'll really end on that note, that I do feel that it was a contribution the young people here in Charlotte made when they called the rallies, the demonstrations, the encampments, and they did everything they could to put that message out, both to the convention here, to all the news media here, and to the people of the world. That's a kind of defense that we really need of our rights. It's a real building of solidarity, people's struggles, and people's movements. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Founders. I wish that we had an hour to give to everybody, because I know you're all such a wealth of knowledge. But I appreciate what you did share today. So our last speaker for this panel is Mr. Khalil Meek.
I'd like to say Assalamu alaikum, and thank you all for coming to attend this event, and thank AMA for setting it up and giving us this forum. I think this is one of the most pressing issues facing our country today, and I really think that we need to be ambassadors of what we hear today so that we can take it to our circle of influence and try to make a difference. I represent an organization called the Muslim Legal Fund, and we actually are a charity that helps Muslims face legal challenges, and we see what happens in the courtroom. So I just want to share with you a few minutes, because our panel has already highlighted the issues that we're facing on a public level, an advocacy level. We see things happening all around us with discrimination of minorities. And I want to share with you something that's a little more stealth, something that you don't see, something that you don't hear about, and kind of add that perspective to the things that we see in open public happening around us. For example, when we're talking about the foundation or the principles of this country, everybody is speaking about the Constitution and due process. And we have this transparent or open form of government. We have checks and balances. We have a system in place that the United States considers to be the highest standard in the civilized world. The United States prides itself on its judicial system. It says that we're as good or better than any country in the world because here is a nation of laws, and these laws are here to protect everybody. Equal justice, as Sarah said. We have this equal access. Everybody has the status of being innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This foundation, this vision that this country has set and implemented for 200 years is under assault. And it's an assault openly in some times, but even more so what I consider stealth. We have today cases that are involving national security issues that the government is claiming that the need for national security outweighs the defendant's right to civil liberties. And if you're not aware of this, if you're not concerned about this, then these precedents will become binding on everybody. We've heard the term secret evidence. I think everybody understands the concept. That means we have evidence and you can't see it. But the secret evidence, when you get to a courtroom, somebody has to hear it. Somehow it has to be presented to a jury so that you can make your case. When these issues get before a court, the government, instead of disclosing its evidence and saying, prepare to go to court, it cherry picks its evidence and said, this is what we want you to review, prepare for this. When the defense counsel says, give me everything because I have a right to exculpatory evidence, I have the right to see everything that you have on my client. You may have tons of information beneficial to me that you're not disclosing. The government says that they have the right to be selective in their presentation and their disclosure. So we have this wall back here, we'll talk about in the next session, of people who have faced issues in court and not even been able to see their own statements to use for their benefit. Add to that the weight of the government claiming its right for security purposes to have anonymous witnesses, anonymous experts. Let that sink in. Think about the right to confront your accuser, and your accuser is anonymous. You can't challenge, you can't vet. We have cases that we're seeing where the government claims for security issues that the rule of law in presenting evidence is too restrictive to deal with these types of cases. So they say, let's create a new theory that we can present evidence in a case as one piece of evidence, coming from 1,000 sources, from 1,000 different people and 1,000 different women, all considered either hearsay, can't meet the rules of evidence, can't come in, can't be used in a normal trial, being allowed in a courtroom because of the nature of the charge and the difficulty of the presentation, and being told that the weight of all of it can be considered in a courtroom. And when you add this type of leverage, this type of secrecy, this type of heavy-handed prosecutions to a climate of fear, when you have politics of fear, when you have everything in the mass media talking about we need to be safe, and we're justifying excessive surveillance, unwarranted suspicion, executive orders that allow the president to declare a U.S. citizen capable of being assassinated, when you have endless investigations, preemptive prosecutions, the government is taking it to a new level, to a level where just on the idea of a theory, they're taking lawful behavior and a series of lawful activities and criminalizing it into criminal conduct. I'd like to use an example. Some people may think that the security outweighs the need for civil liberties today, for whatever argument they make. If this direction continues, we will have set a course that is hostile to our foundation, hostile to our civil freedoms, hostile to everything this country was founded upon. And some people still look at it as it's the minority, it's the other, it's not me. And I would like to share with you an analogy that I've learned from some of my distinguished colleagues, that today as a Muslim dealing with these issues in a courtroom, we see the injustice, but we're not the only ones who see the effect of what's taking place. Other civil rights and civil liberties organizations see what's happening in the courtroom and are just as concerned as we are. And they share with us an analogy I want to share with you. They're looking at the Muslim community as a minority group, but as a canary in a coal mine. How many of you are familiar with that analogy? In coal and mining coal, coal miners dig underground for coal, and at times gas is released. And this gas, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, and it's actually deadly. So if you breathe too much of it, you can die while digging coal. And people did die. But the coal miners developed a very instinctive way to fight this because they wanted to know how to get away from the gas before it became deadly. They came up with an idea of taking with them a little canary, a bird, down in the coal mine. So when the gas is released, the bird's affected just like you are. But the canary can only take a little amount of gas and it'll fall over dead. When you see the canary pass out, it's time for you to leave. So without any sophisticated equipment, they had that canary that told them when it was time to get out. What I'm told from all types of civil rights, civil liberties, the legal community, the National Lawyers Guild, the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, is that today, the Muslims are being perceived by the legal community as the canary in the coal mine. And that once we fall over, or once this gas effect takes place, it's coming for all of us. And we need to be concerned and we need to be aware. So I just wanted to share that with you, that the Muslim Legal Fund is seeing not only the issues that are being brought before the community, but we're seeing things in the courtroom that are trying to reshape this country. And it's a direct assault on civil freedoms and civil liberties. So thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Mr. Meek, for that. Does anybody have any questions? The floor is open.
How many non-Muslims have you encountered with your list of people who have been?
We started off our inquiry basically with the Muslim community because they were the first people that were subject to preemptive prosecution. And I just want to explain that preemptive prosecution is where the government looks at your ideology and says, you know, this ideology, we may come in conflict with what the government wants to do, we're concerned about it. We're going to try to convict you of a fake or manufactured crime before you actually commit a real crime so that we can get you locked up. And that's, you know, that's the preemptive part of preemptive prosecution. They prosecute you before they commit a crime. And we got to be able to identify this quite easily. They had a sort of a playbook for doing it. And so we initially started with the Muslim community, and it was probably not until they started on the peace community out in the Midwest. There was a number of people that were a part of a peacemaking group that went abroad to do various things in Palestine and Colombia and so on. And because that brought them in contact with various designated terrorist organizations, supposedly, that would have been a basis for material support for terrorism, and so they've started an investigation of them. They're not locked up yet, but that's a particular group. I have Bradley Manning on the wall out there. We are also looking at cases involving animal rights activists. That's actually the first terrorist law was passed to go after animal rights activists. We think probably environmentalists from time to time show up. Daniel McGowan is another one. So there's quite a number of these different groups, but clearly the Muslim community has taken the brunt of the attack.
Thank you.
Mr. Nance, you mentioned, I think you mentioned the term COINTELPRO, and I think the Congressman also mentioned that. I'm unaware of that. Could you elucidate what's that about?
Yeah, that is a counterintelligence program. It was devised by the FBI in response to a lot of activity that was going on in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And it involved the Indian movement, the peace movement for Vietnam, a whole bunch of other things. And what they basically tried to do was to disrupt organizations. They would plant false information. They would try to get people fired from their jobs. There's a whole lot of other things. But the brunt of it fell, and the worst part of it fell on the African American community, and particularly on the leadership, the Black Panthers. And J. Edgar Hoover, I think, was just incensed by them and just wanted them taken out and did the best he could to just drive them out of the country or kill them off or break up the organizations. And I have to say, to this day, I was out in ISTA and I was sitting there at a booth and a man came over and he was arguing for Jamil Al-Amin. And, you know, these are leaders that are still in jail. These people are still in jail. Move 9 is still in jail from that period of time. And no one has ever gone back and really looked at them and said, you know, this was all manufactured by the FBI. Why are these people still in jail? We should be getting them out along with everybody else on the board. And that's why we have COINTELPRO victims are also on the wall back here.
Thank you. So, okay. So I guess this will be the last question?
Yeah. We've been talking about all this. What have we done up till now, or what else can we do to repeal this, and how can we all, be included, or what we can do individually or together to work for more? Because I know Dr. Sami Alarian, he's such a wonderful person, and he's in there, and Dr. Aga Saeed and everybody. We have all been trying to help out to do the process. What can we do with the due process and all that?
Right. Can I make this suggestion? Because the next session that's coming on right after this is about preemptive prosecution. And we're going to spend a whole session on this thing. So let's talk about it then. How's that? I don't have a simple answer, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you everybody. I would like to give a round of applause to the panelists and they did an amazing job. And I just want to remind everybody that at 2:30, I believe in this very room, we'll be having another panel on thought crimes and preemptive prosecutions from 2:30 to 4. So it'd be great if you could return for that, and please let other people know about our sessions today. We will be continuing with 2 other panels tomorrow, and if you're looking, the cards are on all the seats, so you can definitely pass them out. There are more cards in the back. We definitely want, in the DNC, I don't think there's much of this going on. So I think I think there's some very crucial information here for everybody's community, not just the Muslim American. So please, if you could tell people, I think this is something they could really learn a lot from. Thank you.
If you are interested in watching more civic education videos, please visit our websites.